Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of I Am a Podcast Pro. Because it's
Yes.
all about that ownership. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I am your co-host, Joe. And on my I gotta make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. and on my I guess that would be my left. I had to make sure. That would be my sister.
There we are, co-host Marion. Hello here. Happy to be here. Let's get it.
Yes. Thank you all for tuning in this evening for a powerful episode, as we
Hmm.
always like to do around this time, because last week we gave y'all the difference between talking and conversation.
Yeah.
This week we're gonna define how to take your conversation into interview mode, because there's a difference
Th-
even between the conversation and the interview. So this is how we're gonna start it off this week, Marion.
Yes, sir.
If you had to put a definition on conversation versus what an interview is, what would be the difference for you?
The difference for me between what a conversation and an interview is. Listen, when you're having a conversation, it is kind of much more of an intimate setting to me.
Mhm,
In terms of you're sharing information, but it's intimately just for the two of you.
mhm,
It's totally different to me with an interview. In an interview, as a host, you're setting the platform for your guests to be able to share information so your community can grow. They go from
mhm.
viewers just viewing a conversation to actually being invested in what's being expressed and shared, all the wisdom and nuggets that's coming along with what they're saying. And then they're able to take that and go ahead and apply it to everything that they're doing in life.
Mhm.
That's how I
Yes,
see it.
yes, indeed. I agree with all of that. That's the way that I look at it as well. It's a lot more. Conversation tends to be more personal, um, and it can also be a little bit more on the informal side.
Mm.
Whereas a interview, there's a little more structure, a little bit more formality to it, and there is more like you said, that information giving that you have with an interview. There's a little bit more focus with an interview. You can have focus with a conversation as well, but it's just, to me, the slight differences between the two is that a conversation you can have with pretty much anybody, whereas an interview,
Hmm.
it's very much almost like a specialty, like a special event, a special presentation almost.
Yes, a special
Yeah,
event, special presentation, because you should be selective with who you have as
that's
a
right.
guest presenting on your platform. It should be in line with your mission, in line with who you are serving.
That's right.
It's it's very important. It's key. That's how you engage with your audience. Turn them in. They end up turning into your community
Hmm.
so that you end up serving them and they're willing and able and more than excited to go get in those comments and share, get in your Facebook group and share, and want just to be around other like-minded people.
That's right. That's right. So, keeping that in mind, when you are, at least for you, examples, and you can give examples. So, when you think about direction and the importance of that when it comes to taking that conversation into interview mode, how important is direction, and like what kind of an example can you give in terms of a moment where you had to kind of sort of make sure that you had the direction down, maybe not necessarily in concrete bullet points or anything like that, but just knowing before you even get to the point of having this conversation, having this interview with this person, you had to have a specific direction to how you wanted the conversation to go overall.
And so that all starts with, it's amazing because we talked last week about talking. So in that
Mhm.
talking, you start to figure out what are those directions that this person has, that wisdom, that experience, that life pain to talk through, that education, that financial education investment that they can share with somebody else, so they don't have to make that same big investment, because they can gather that wisdom from that person. So
Mhm.
that's where that talking comes with, and then you'll realize, I think I want to have a deeper conversation with this person. Then you get to that conversation, and in that conversation, you really can unveil what they have to share
Mhm. Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
offer and to serve and to just bring somebody else along on the trip, so that they can what hearing those conversations turn into that interview. With that interview, it shortens your time. It
Mhm.
shortens your time if you're listening to what the person is saying. Even an interview, you would think that it's simple, but just talking to how a father raises his daughter, that's something where fathers can learn, daughters can glean from, even mothers, everybody has a dad or a dad figure.
Yeah.
I can say for the most part.
Mhm.
There are always unfortunate situations. So
Yeah.
that's not what I'm referring to.
Mhm.
So you find in that, I'm just giving an example of a conversation. You
Right.
find those nuggets in talking with somebody, and then you get all the way to that point to, wow, the things that you're sharing about being a dad,
Mhm.
that would be amazing for my community. We can do it from this perspective. Would you mind coming on and sharing? And that's how you get the direction for how that conversation is going to go. And you already know within yourself, wow, this is going to be impactful for my
Mhm.
audience.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that, because it's like you have to, it feeds right off of what we were talking about from last week when it comes to sometimes you need the talking in order to get to the level of conversation. But then when you start progressing from conversation to interview mode, it's that matter of like, okay, now we are with each other. We're in lockstep to a certain degree, and it's really kind of fleshing out, okay, what's going to work for not only your brand as a guest, but also my platform as a
Hmm,
host. How
cool.
do these two things fit together, and how can we maximize the most? How can both of our communities get the most out of this conversation and this
Hmm.
interview that we're about to have?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, because
yeah,
that's very important. You want to make sure that you're not just having a conversation where it's just for your kicks and giggles.
right. Exactly. I like
It
that
can't.
PG-13 version of
It can't just be. It can't just be for your kicks and giggles.
Right,
Nobody
right.
wants to see that. That's not serving anyone. So
No.
always keep in mind the interview should have a purpose of serving in terms of information, getting a glimpse into someone's life, into someone's business, into someone's path to success, into someone's path to pulling themselves up and making it a successful, in the path of just understanding peace,
Mhm.
just understanding peace. That, I think that's an amazing, for my community, Confident You podcast community,
Yeah.
Confident You network. That's an
Mhm.
amazing thing. If I to get a guest to be able to unpack how they didn't have peace,
Right.
how their peace was disturbed, and then you know come around and admit it was
Yeah.
me. I was giving that thing away. I was letting it go every chance I got.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was throwing it at people. And
Mhm.
now I'm holding it near and dear, and I'm not allowing it to go. That to me, to talk with someone who's actually been on a route to that, just that simple topic, to me is something that is helpful to my community.
Yeah.
Confident You.
For myself, like probably the best examples of like direction are the difference between having a guest on a first time and then having them on a second time. So usually the direction in the first time I have them on is really getting to know you type of thing, especially for people this is their first time in front of a lot of people and they're not used to interviews or they're not used to these types of conversations, and it's like really a warm up. But then when they come back and circle back around, say, hey, I want to do another interview, and it's like, okay, cool, now it's a matter like, okay, what can I give different, or what can we give different this time around than we gave the first time around? And on platforms where I've had like music focused type things, whatever it might be, a lot of times like, okay, do you have a new project coming out? Or do you have something else coming out? Or what can we add this time around from maybe even the last conversation that we can take and now like make a brand new conversation based on this or based on that little piece that we had from the last time because that was so good. There's so many different things that you can find when it
Mm.
comes to that second interview, that it's like you don't want it to be a rehash of the first one, but you want it to be a continuation and then create it so that it's its own, it has its own life, it has its own personality. So
Mm.
that was like, that's probably the best example of direction that I can give in terms of, you know, my past platforms that I've had, especially when I've had a guest on more than once.
It has its own life, it has its own direction, it has its own purpose, topic, and energy. Listen,
Mhm.
asking, you were talking about that second episode and the direction of that. Even in the first episode, I find it really useful to ask the guests, what's something about you or about what you do that you've never discussed?
Mhm. That's great. That is great. That is
Some
great.
something that's fresh, something that's new, something that people don't know that is an aspect of what you do, something that most people aren't even talking about. Give me that undercover nugget
Mhm.
so we can, unearth that and then, share it with the people. I think those are the jewels that you find in that direction of conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have our direction.
Hmm.
You have the general idea of where you want to go. Now it's a matter of getting there. How do you get there? And in terms of like structure, when you're structuring, when you've got your direction, but then you want to kind of sort of give it a little bit more structure, what's your process of structuring that conversation so that it not only has direction, but it's like, okay, these are the points that generally I want to hit on. And how do you leave room for that space where more could be added to the conversation?
Okay, structure and more added to the conversation. Let me start with that last one. The more added to the conversation is something for me that I find is mostly revealed in active listening. You
Mm,
can hear more of what someone is saying if you're not concentrating down on a piece of paper or in a
mhm.
card
Yep.
so much that you can't hear what they're saying. That's where you're going to hear that extra piece of information. Wait, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. How does that impact this? How does this impact that? Or what do you think about this scenario? If you're actively listening, you will hear the open doors in the conversation. Now,
Yes.
getting to structure for what I do as a whole of an interview, I like to start where the person is so that the audience, the community can understand the impact and the authority that is sitting before them and sharing with them. So I like to
Mhm.
start where they are. And
Mhm.
then I like to go back to discover, how they started. What was the beginning? What were
Mhm.
those obstacles?
Mhm.
What were the hindrances? What were the changes they needed to make? And then what's the plan that they could lay out for anyone in the community who's going through or who is in the same niche or business that they are in, so that they can not hit those same potholes and pitfalls
Mhm.
and get a quicker result and resolve to kind of their trajectory is much faster to get to the good result of what they're there to share about.
Yeah, yeah. And I like how you start where they are and then work backwards, because and this is something important for everybody to know that's watching. Like, there is no right or wrong way to do it, because I'm the type of person, I tend to start from the beginning, because I'm the type of person, I want to know who you were before who you are now. I
Mm,
want to know the origin story, like and some of the personal stuff, not too much of the personal stuff, but
right.
it's like origin story, um the lessons you learned along the way in whatever discipline that you're in, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's you're a writer, filmmaker, you are a politician, no matter what it might be. Like, all of these lessons that you learned along the way that helped you to become the person that you are now, and then kind of sort of bring it to now, because I'm just a chronological person like that. But in saying that, both of our ways outline structure, both of our
Mm,
ways, and a lot of times you don't have to have it written down. It's a matter of just knowing, one, the direction, two, the structure of how you want to attack the thing, and also leaving that room for additional questions to be asked, because I can't tell you how many times that people will answer a question that's already on the paper, so I don't need to ask it. So it's like, okay, that's already been answered. But you said something in the midst of what you just said that, like,
mm.
I find very interesting. So let's peel back the layers of that some more. And then that creates its own conversation, or its own part that, like, gives the viewer or gives the audience a little bit more than what they were expecting, number one. And number two, sometimes it's a nice curveball for the guests, because they're not expecting it to be asked. And sometimes that element of surprise gives a more authentic answer
It
when it
does.
comes to when you're talking to somebody, because it's like, okay, this wasn't on the paper, or we didn't discuss this, but nobody's ever asked me that. I love this. There is nothing better as an interviewer than saying, wow, nobody has ever asked me that before. That is one of the highest compliments, if you are an interviewer, to be paid, that that you took the time to really listen, like you said, Marion, listen attentively to
Yes.
what's being said, because
Yes.
those are where the gems and the jewels are in the conversation. And that's what, like, transforms it, or that's one of the things in transforming it from conversation into interview.
Hmm. That, and I would suggest, as a host, you want to share this structure with your guests. Do
Yes.
not depend on them having watched your episodes
All
and
right.
being fans. Do
Mm-hmm.
not trust that people have said this. If
Yes,
people say this to you,
that's
don't
right.
trust that someone says, I've seen every episode, I've seen this, I've seen. I'm not saying that anyone has said that to me has lied, because one person has said that to me and I know he didn't. So that is not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, you're, and this is a close person. So a close person, I, yes, watched every episode. A rando, and they're not quoting anything from any episode or any nugget that they got.
Right.
Watch out for that. And you
Hmm.
want to just make sure you always, no matter what the person says, give them that structure. I don't care how many times they've been on the show. Don't
Hmm.
go, yeah, it's like, hey, I just got to go through this real quick. It takes 30 seconds just to go,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to go from here, and then I'm going to go here, and then we're going to go here. And any ventures off is because you've said something amazing, and I just want to hear more about it.
Right.
That
Right.
easy.
Hmm.
That easy. It
Absolutely.
puts them at ease, makes them
Hmm.
comfortable. They're like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to go. Because I'm telling you, it doesn't seem like it's intimidating, but just to
Hmm.
hit record and someone know a camera and audio equipment is playing, you get a
Yep.
totally different person. You
That's
get,
right.
you get, you get you're looking like, who are you?
Right.
So you want to, I do everything I can to make sure my guest is laughing or really engrossed
Hmm.
in the title or the subject line, with a lead in with just me before they hit the platform, so that by the time they hit the platform, they're like, girl, what we about to talk about? Because what you just said was amazing.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
just so, all of it just melts away. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is a perfect segue into really getting to the heart of the striking that balance between the informality of a
mm,
conversation and the formality of an interview. And you've already touched upon that, but like expand upon that a little bit more. Like, how do you do that on you? I mean, a little bit more like, how do you do that on your platform, especially while you're live? Because you've already kind of sort of highlighted, like, okay, the pregame, I done already warmed you up. I done loosened you up. You know, I kind of think about Martin when he's like, you know, I'm gonna soften him up with the jab. You know what I'm saying? Then I'm gonna go to the body. You know? I'm gonna beat the boy and I'm gonna beat him bad.
listen, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Don't, don't love me like you do. Okay. So the informality of a conversation. I am much more relaxed. I personally am much more relaxed. It's much more, like you said, informal.
Yeah.
But to transition that into an interview, I'm sitting up. I'm really, really attentive and paying attention. I'm looking into the camera to make sure I'm engaging with the person I'm interviewing and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing my best to make sure that I'm choosing my words carefully. In an intimate conversation, it's okay if I stumble and I use different, kind of misspeak
Mm-hmm.
frequently. But in an interview, for you to come off authentic, it needs to be less. Not
Right.
perfect.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying perfect, but I'm
Mm.
saying you need to be paying attention to yourself.
Yes. Yes.
You
Agreed.
need to be paying. While we're sitting here now, I'm doing everything to keep checking myself. Don't blink too much. I know that light's too bright. Don't It's like certain things that I'm checking. I'm constantly doing a checklist as we're still carrying on this conversation, but I'm also making sure I'm using diction that you can understand and hear, and I'm articulating so that you can understand what I'm saying. But don't even think she won't use bad grammar, because it's part of me.
Exactly.
It's part of my culture.
Right.
We have our own language. Ebonics, yes, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it slips out. I don't say, I'm not even saying it slips out. It's naturally a part of my speech and
Right.
my expression. So
Right.
because it's naturally a part of my speech and my expression, I also have to be conscious of, you're being recorded. Someone is trying to gain information. Someone is trying to gain wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I may say or my guest may share may change someone's life.
Right.
So it's important that I pay attention to that.
Yes.
That's the
Absolutely.
difference for me for an intimate conversation where I lay back and it is what it is. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not worried about being in the camera shot because there's no camera. Well, I have
Right.
to pay attention to where I am, where I'm positioned.
Yeah.
Don't, if I laugh, I'm gone. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I will take a moment and reach for something, but for the most part, you're going to look
Yeah.
at this, and 95% of the time, I'm going to be centered where I need to be and make sure I'm attentive to. Listen, with leg cramping up, I can't
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to it. Listen, I gotta Kobe this. You
Yes.
wouldn't think that there are physical things that will be happening in your body that you then have to control and
Yes.
still stay attentive to what's going on. You wouldn't think that people would walk in the room looking at you like you could stop and hold the whole conversation. Listen to
Right.
me. I already tell them, I say, even if somebody has passed away, I can't help them right now.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
it won't bring them back. I'm not being insensitive. I'm going to share something. There is an episode the day my brother passed.
Wow.
I still, I knew my
Mm-hmm.
brother
Mm-hmm.
was very proud of me opening up the mic and finally sharing wisdom, is what he said, what he
Yeah.
called it. He's like, you're sharing wisdom, Shelly, when you speak. It's my nickname. When
Mm,
you speak, people really, there's a shift in their life. So I know my brother would have wanted me right there
yeah.
doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I held it together for almost 2 hours. And then
Mm,
she mentioned the military. The last thing she said was, and I helped the
mm,
vets. I have
yeah.
this nonprofit and I helped the vets. And I lost. I started
Yeah.
crying. So I'm just telling you, don't not be the human that you are,
Right.
but do your best. See? Bye bye bye. Do your best to present. But
Yeah.
how many other words in this it, have I, misspoken in this
Hmm.
time? You can imagine what's going through my mind with what I'm sharing right now. So
Right.
you just want to be cautious of things like that. Again, I say you need to know your triggers.
Yes.
You need to know when when things, your mind, your thinking, your emotions, your energy will shift.
Absolutely.
You need to get ahead of them and make sure
Mhm.
you already have a plan to hold control of it.
The only thing that I would say that basically kind of sort of like puts a bow on what you said is professionalism.
Hmm.
That's really what takes it from a conversation to an interview. It's just a little bit more professionalism. Two words: professionalism and polish.
Hmm.
When it's a conversation, it's a little bit more raw, but when it's an interview, it's a little bit more polished. All of the things that you said that you have to be cognizant of in terms of your triggers, in terms of your crutch words or crutch phrases, because I know I have them. I've had to consciously go through time and, like, when I'm talking, consciously be aware of the fact that I have crutch words that I say, especially when I don't know what to say or I'm trying to find the words to say in a specific moment. So I have to be mindful of that. And you don't want to get to the point where you overthink it, but you do want to get to the point where you're conscious enough to it, whereas you know how to control it, you know how to manage it, and it doesn't take away from the conversation or it doesn't sound like you're just talking on the street with just anybody. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that because I think what conversation does is it makes people comfortable. But what an interview does is show people that you're serious about showcasing them and what it is that they have to bring to the table.
That right there shows people you're serious. And for my ladies, a conversation is not your best outfit. You just in some slides and sweats and a t-shirt. But an interview, you about to get that job.
There it is. There it is. That's it. That's it. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a great place to leave it right there.
Hey, right there.
We have left y'all with some serious gems and jewels in terms of how to take your conversation into interview mode. Once again, I am Joe.
I am Marion, and
And
I am a podcast pro.
you were what? Say it one more time.
I didn't say it with my chest. Let me
One more
say it
time.
with my chest.
Say it with your
And
chest.
I am a podcast pro.
That's right. And that's how we want y'all to say it. And what's that PRO? Let them know what that
P
PRO is.
R O. Listen, the P in pro, you got to be on your purpose. You
Mhm.
got to know you share, and it's so easy. People get really, really, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my purpose is. Go for that thing that comes easy for you, that brings other people comfort, brings other people direction, brings other people joy, brings other people understanding. There is your purpose. Then we got to go with the R. Listen, you got to be resilient. I'm telling you right now, and nothing's easy. But if it comes easy, it goes easier. Meaning it's going to come easy and it's going to run straight through your fingers and leave just as fast. So good things take work. It
Mhm.
takes going through some things. You don't get better living the easy life. You get better and stronger and more proficient at what you're doing by going through the obstacles, going through the challenges, getting to that other side, by going through it and being able to look back at somebody else, say, hey, don't go that way. Come around
Mm-hmm.
here. It's
Mm-hmm.
better. You still gonna have some stuff, but it's better this way. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that experience of it, and that, oh, outstanding, because we want you to stand out as the unique you that you are.
That's right. That's right. Yes, indeed. So we thank all of you podcast pros out there for tuning in tonight. And remember that I am is first for a reason, because you got to own the fact that you are a podcast pro, because you have all of the tools. God has endowed each and every last one of you with the tools to do this. So it's just a matter of doing it and knowing that you have it.
Go ahead, tell them how to like, share, and subscribe.
Yes. So please make sure that y'all like, share, and subscribe. We are at I Am a Podcast Pro on YouTube and also on Instagram. And you can also follow our Facebook community, which is I Am a Podcast Pro.
There we are. Thank y'all for joining us. See you on the other side.
Peace.